Welcome to the Road of Stars podcast. We meet amazing creative leaders from all over the world. I'm your host, Mwenya Kawesha. I work in artificial intelligence and arts. On this show, we speak to brilliant creators, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs who are transforming creative industries. They share how they began and what they do to succeed in a changing world. Everyone who wants to pursue a creative life and career should have that opportunity. Together, we can make the world more creative. Precious Solana Adams is an internationally recognized world-class Black ballerina. She is originally from Canton, Michigan, and currently resides in London, England, where she is a full-time soloist ballerina for the English National Ballet. Precious's training began nearly 20 years ago, and she has since trained and danced all over the world. Most notably training at the Bolshoi Ballet Academy in Moscow, Russia, Princess Grace Academy in Monte Carlo, Monaco, as well as the National Ballet School in Toronto, Canada. Precious was awarded with the National Young Arts Foundation USA Prize in the field of dance. She was also on the Elle and Evening Standard lists of 100 most influential people in 2018. She most recently has been included on the Powerlist 2023, which celebrates the achievements of the most influential people of African heritage in the UK. I'm so delighted to welcome Precious to the podcast. Precious, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Monya. It's a real treat to be featured in your series.
Amazing. I don't know if you remember when I first met you in person at Sadler's Wells, you kindly sent out some tickets for a beautiful dance performance. So I met you and I looked at you and I thought, oh my God, she's floating. She is actually floating. Like, you're just so graceful. I was just so like, oh my God, how do I become that graceful? Always just blown away by you and your career, your elegance. So excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's nice to hear.
Amazing. Getting started, you are a ballerina. So how did it all begin with you with ballet?
So it all began 20 some odd years ago. Essentially, I was always a mover and I was always really responsive to music. And I think my mother was really aware of that. And she signed me up for dance classes. And it's sort of like the rest is history. I fell in love with it straight away. I started off doing like jazz and tap really recreationally. And then when I was about 8 years old, I tried like my first ballet class. And I pretty quickly just told my parents I wanted to spend more and more time going to ballet lessons more frequently, where, you know, it was something maybe I did once or twice a week. It pretty quickly became something I would go to classes 6 days a week. By the time I was 10 years old, I was going 6 days a week, and I just got really, really obsessed. I'd go to the library and rent every DVD and every book. And this was just before YouTube. The library was really my main source of learning about this art form. And I did a little summer program when I was 10 years old. And funnily enough, I ended up having the same teacher in Moscow, something like 8 years later. She told my mother, you know, your daughter has all the capabilities, all the facility, and most definitely the passion to do this professionally. And up until that point, I didn't fully understand that you could be a professional ballet dancer. I thought it was just really something people did for fun or as a hobby. I didn't realize it was a profession until that point. And she told my mother, if you're serious, you should consider sending your daughter to a boarding school, a ballet boarding school. It's sort of like pre-professional vocational training. And those sorts of schools start dancers when they're around 10 or 11 years old to really like mold them and groom them to being like high-level ballet dancers. So then we started looking into that, and that's why when you're reading my bio there, you mentioned like 3 different international schools, and those were all boarding schools that we found that I ended up going to, starting with the one that was I think it was the one that was closest to where I lived in Michigan. So the school in Canada in Toronto, it was the best one that we could access in terms of the quality of the education and the training. It was about a 6-hour drive away from my parents' house. And so I went there when I was 11.
Amazing. And what really strikes me about what you've just said, Precious, is how young you were firstly, and also just the amount of drive that you must have had to be operating at that level, already at international schools. So I guess, were there any sort of formative experiences or moments, things that gave you that level of drive and ability to operate like that when you were just so young?
When I think back, for me, it was really just an innate passion, just pure passion and fascination and obsession. And I think the more and more I was exposed to more high-level dancers, and then eventually YouTube came out, and then that opened this whole other portal of information of what was possible, seeing people on the other side of the world in Europe, seeing beautiful videos of dancers, like athletic, strong, expressive bodies. And I just said, that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I want to do. And it was just clear as day. Perhaps in some ways I was lucky that it was so clear to me what I wanted to do. There was no question about it, which is kind of funny to think about. I think my parents are probably a little bit, I would say they're traditionalists. My mother's a dentist, and my father's an orthodontist, and education and having opportunities for their children, that was really important to them, to be able to offer us opportunities. And I think they wanted us to have a comfortable life, and they probably were imagining me to go to university or have a pretty traditional career path and things. But I think it was just so undeniable that I wasn't going to be interested in focusing on that sort of life path, that they were willing to just back me 100%, because they were sort of like, she's so passionate and she's so focused. There's no way she'll fail. So I think that's why it was easy for them to support me.
I love that. Wow. Honestly, I don't hear that very often. I really love that. So you're a soloist at the English National Ballet. So for people who maybe don't know much about how ballet companies are structured, so what is a soloist? How do you become a soloist?
Sure. So ballet companies, so first, as a business structure, oftentimes the big ballet companies, they'll have an affiliate school, and the tuition of those students helps to facilitate having a business organization, hence the company, that employs dancers at a professional level through adulthood. So that's kind of how that works. The school feeds into the company. And then within the company, traditionally ballet companies have a hierarchy system where you have the ensemble, the corps de ballet. It's traditionally called the corps de ballet, which is the big group of dancers. If you go to a performance or to a traditional ballet, those will be all the group dances, will be the corps de ballet dancers. And then there will be soloist, the soloist rank, which will be, that's sort of what do they call it in films? It's like the leading girl's sidekick. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's that sort of, you're featured, but you're not the lead star of the role. And then there's the principals, and they are the ones that do the featured lead in the show.
All right. And then you've performed for so long, and hundreds of performances around the world, including principal roles such as Aurora in Sleeping Beauty as a guest artist in Sir Kenneth Macmillan's Elite Syncopations at the Royal Opera House, and then also the principal role in Cinderella at the Royal Albert Hall in the spring of 2023. So whether you want to talk about those performances or others, I would love to hear more about the roles that you've really loved and really enjoyed, and why.
Sure. I just remembered it's called isn't it the supporting lady to the leading lady in a film? Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, so I guess let's see some of my favorite lead roles. So yeah, Cinderella at Royal Albert Hall, that was last spring. That was a big honor for me. It was probably the highlight of my career thus far. And this was Christopher Wheeldon's production of Cinderella. So this particular ballet was reimagined in, I believe it was 2012. It was first recreated by Christopher Wheeldon. Don't quote me on that year, but it was made in the 21st century. So it was a more contemporary take on the classic story of Cinderella. And it was still classical ballet. Perhaps a little bit neoclassical in terms of the styling of the choreography, but still Edwardian styled, inspired costumes. It was still styled in a way that was still traditional. And then, of course, the Royal Albert Hall was a really great venue. However, it is a non-traditional structure of a stage in terms of how ballet is typically presented on a proscenium-styled stage. At the Royal Albert Hall, it's a round stage.
Precious. So what is a proscenium?
Oh, proscenium style is just a normal stage setup where there's an audience in front, and the act is like on that one like front facing stage. If there's just like the one front face to it. Just imagine any traditional theater you would have gone to is called like a proscenium style. And then Royal Albert Hall is not that shape. It's an arena shape. It's a round circular shape where you're kind of performing to a 360 audience. Ballets aren't traditionally made in that way. So they had to take Christopher Wheeldon's ballet that was originally made for proscenium style and turn it into a 360 production that's just a little bit more immersive, actually, because sometimes there's people coming in from the side doors and things. Actually, I do that. Cinderella does that in his production. I'm running in the ballroom scene. I'm running in and out of the different doors of Royal Albert Hall and back down the stairs and sort of in a new entrance into the ballroom, if you will. So there's just more dimensions to it, essentially, and it's a lot more physically demanding because a lot more space to cover than a traditional stage. But it was a big honor for me, and it just felt like a role that really suited me, and I think that might have played a part in why they casted me as Cinderella, as just sort of the story of rags to riches. I think it was easy for them to picture me in that role.
Honestly, such a beautiful set of performances. And was there anything you wanted to say about Sleeping Beauty?
That was a long time ago. So that was in 2019, summer of 2019. There's a company in South Africa called Cape Town City Ballet. And essentially just through the years, through a network of people, I had befriended Debbie. She's no longer the director of Cape Town City Ballet, but before she became the director, I was introduced to her, and I guess she took a liking to me. She became the director of Cape Town City Ballet, and they were going to do a production of Sleeping Beauty, and she got in touch with me and invited me to be a guest artist in that production, which was a great opportunity for me because I had never done a full-length classical ballet up until that point, and Sleeping Beauty is a real beast of classical ballets in terms of how much technique is required of the principal dancer. It's really Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake. They're sort of said to be the two technically most challenging principal roles to do. So it was a really good, safe environment, I think, for me to attempt to tackle that ballet. And I learned a lot. It was a great learning experience.
That's amazing. And when you're actually performing, what sort of things go through your mind? Do you ever think like, oh yeah, laundry's not done. Oh, tomorrow I've got to do that.
Absolutely. It depends on the ballet. It depends on the roles. It depends on my role and how challenging it is. If it's a more challenging role, if I'm the principal role or the lead role, I'm 100% present. There's no other way to do it. You have to be like 110% in it, present, because you're in control of the whole situation. You command the stage. If something goes wrong, you have to be so present to be able to dance your way out of it so that the audience can't tell that anything has happened. And the best artists can do it flawlessly. And so that's why you have to be so present. Let's say then if I was to do an ensemble piece now, because you're one of many, other people can pick up the slack around different corners if something goes wrong, if something happens, or you might spend a lot of time, you might be sitting on the side or waiting on the side as your role while the principal dances if you're perhaps one of the core dancers or one of the ensemble dancers. So then there's like a little bit more space either for your artistic license and like freedom of expression. You can kind of dig into your character and your role, or I might be thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner after you've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows, or there's some shows I've done over 150 times in the exact same role. It's easy for me to think about other things. Which is, I probably am not supposed to say that. But
And one of the things that I've heard from other ballet dancers is, ballet's not glamorous. I mean, it certainly looks it. Like when you're at the Royal Albert Hall, you're Cinderella. Does that feel glamorous to you?
Aspects of it feel glamorous for sure, but then aspects of it can feel like a job. So there's that duality, and you're constantly feeling every facet of those dimensions, of it feeling like a job, of it feeling like work, of feeling really glamorous, of it feeling really gritty. And then on the flip side, you might feel so elated and it might just feel so amazing, or it might be really painful and it might be really exhausting. And you could come in and out of all of those feelings and emotions through the course of the whole show. So like, let's say it's Cinderella and it's a 3-act ballet and you're doing the lead role and you have to be 100% present. A couple hours leading up to the show, you're doing loads of preparation, warming up, hair, makeup, reviewing the steps, et cetera, et cetera. Then the show starts. And once it starts, it all happens really quickly because it's just you're in motion and there's no time to think about what just happened. You're moving on to the next thing and you're on a roll. But while you're on that roll, like there's quick changes, there's all this stuff. There's so many things going on. you're with your partner. Your partner's feeling a certain way that day. It's, in some ways, it can be almost an out-of-body experience, but at the same time, you're 100% in control. It's really difficult to describe it, but it's an awesome feeling.
You've touched on this a little bit with all your answers, but I suppose if you were to summarize or define what is it about ballet that you really, really love the most? Yeah, how'd you do that?
Sure. I think through different phases of my career, I probably would have had different answers for you, but I guess I would say like in this moment, it is still, for me, it is something that brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction. Usually, it usually brings me the most joy and the most satisfaction when I dance well, obviously. It can also be a real source of frustration if I'm not doing my best, or if I'm not feeling my best, or I'm not doing my best. It's, of course, it can be a very competitive art form. But then all of that being said, it is the way that I feel I can express myself the best, perhaps. The way that I feel like I can say so much with my body in a way that I don't feel that I have. For example, like speaking is like, I hate verbal communication because I just feel like I never can say what I mean. But it's funny, you know, I heard this quote once. I have no idea where it came from, but it goes something like, if you can't say it, you write it. If you can't write it, you sing it. And if you can't sing it, you dance it. And if you think about that, it's almost like abstracting these forms from something that's very, very literal to something that's more and more and more expressive. But then dance is actually perhaps very abstract for some people to interpret or to understand. But it is quite funny, like if you've ever had really intense emotions and perhaps like you don't have the words for those emotions because there just aren't words for those emotions, and you have that overwhelming feeling that you just want to sing, and then you have that overwhelming feeling that you just want to move. It's kind of like that. It's like layers and layers of abstraction. Down to dance, I think, is one of the rawest forms of expression because I think it's so transcendental and it can transcend so many like the physical limitations that we have in this world, that structures that we have like in the physical world. I think it transcends language, it transcends speech, it transcends things that might be barriers for us as humans to connect. For example, like all of my colleagues, I think EMB has one of the most diverse companies. Over 30 countries are represented in the company that I work in. And we all come from such different backgrounds, but we are all so connected by having like that intense love of dance and movement that I kind of talked about at the beginning when I was a child. We all were led by that to this place. So we're all like deeply connected by that. So yeah, it's just, I guess it's the way that I'm the most comfortable to express myself.
Oh, that's beautiful. Gosh,
the best way I can express myself.
Gosh, I was going to say something, but I was like, I don't even want to add anything to that. Oh my God. So you've talked, you know, incredibly about ballet yourself as an artist, as a creator. Ballet, you know, people can buy tickets to the ballet. It's also an industry. So what are the things that you've done to navigate it as an industry?
I leave that to the organization to deal with. I just have to show up and dance. It can be something that can be stressful or something that might weigh on my mind a little bit, because obviously I think that's anyone who chooses the path of being an artist. It's not a traditional way of making money. It is dependent on entertaining audiences, attracting audiences, ticket sales, but it's up to the organization to deal with that. And I just hope like they do a great job. And it's just up to me to be fabulous enough that people love it as much as I do, or that they're entertained and they want to come back, or they want to tell their friends. And I think that's also something that drives me, is I think ballet has like the potential, if not, it already is. I think it's one of the best art forms. I believe that it's using the human body. It's a vessel to express so much with the right minds, the right creatives and choreographers, trying things and making things with the right music. Everything aligns and it's absolute magic. It's so close to close to our consciousness and our spirit movement for some reason. Yeah. I leave that to the organization to handle.
Yeah, they're handling it very well. And Precious, you've had quite a bit of very fabulous professional recognition as well. You've won several awards and prizes, including 2 prizes at the Prix de Lausanne in 2014. You've also were awarded Best Contemporary Dancer, Best Emerging Dancer by the National Dance Awards Critics Circle in 2018, and mentioned a lot of the other awards and recognition you've had when I gave your intro. I think recognition is just incredibly important to sort of get that stamp, and that, not to say that, you know, you're not sort of validated by just showing up as you are, but I do think there's a huge amount of power in recognition. So You might disagree. So yeah, how has winning awards, how do you feel that's impacted you, whether personally or professionally?
I think it's impacted me very positively. It's great to get recognition because not everyone gets recognition for all the effort and work that they do. So it's definitely, it feels good to get that recognition. I think it boosts my confidence a little bit. When I go through those periods, the paradox of being an artist, I think they say we have this like cognitive dissonance that I think lives within like most artists, where we're the hardest on ourselves and we're almost the most insecure while also being delusionally self-confident all at the same time. That duality lives in, I think, I don't want to say all artists because really I can only speak for myself, but I've heard this kind of expression of the artist mentality before. And I was like, that is exactly accurate. I can be incredibly insecure while also being delusionally self-confident all at the exact same time. I can hold both those feelings in my being at once while I'm doing the principal role at the Royal Albert Hall in front of 5,000 people. It's a crazy thing, but if you become an artist, you do it because you have to do it. People say that and it's like, either you understand what I'm saying or you don't, but it's like, you literally have to. I have to do this. Luckily, I knew it really early on. But yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge to weigh those two things in your kind of psyche. You know, if one side's coming on really strongly and I'm feeling very, very self-conscious and very insecure. And then other days I'm feeling like just super confident and just like really, really, I think I'm just like so awesome, where everyone's kind of like, pipe down, hun.
Hopefully not.
So yeah, you have to kind of like balance those two things out. But it's wonderful to be recognized because I definitely worked really, really hard.
Absolutely, and long may it continue. And how do you manage your public profile and being visible? Just to use a parallel, I hear a lot from actors that there's like a pressure to be on social media and to be quite sophisticated with managing how people interact with you as a sort of an avatar, as a public figure. And you've been in magazines such as Elle. I think you've had covers of magazines. So yeah, how do you navigate that alongside all of your rehearsals, performances, etc.?
I was going to just respond and say, I don't. Yeah, you know, it's funny. Like my mom's always kind of, I don't want to say pressured me, but she's always kind of encouraged me to, I think, to put more effort and energy into that. And I've always really struggled with not wanting to take away from being committed and focused on my actual work instead of trying to sell my work or sell my brand. So that's a bit of like an inner conflict that's always going, because if you're kind of not present and you're not visible, there's this like looming thing of like, oh, will anyone remember me? Will anyone know about me? Like if I'm not taking up space in the virtual world, like no one will know about me. And you have like that inner conflict. And then this other part of me that's sort of like, oh, but it's not about that anyways. It wasn't about that for the previous generations. They did great things and people remembered their great things. So yeah, it's more of an inner conflict of like not wanting to take away from the quality of my work while also wanting to put energy and time into, yeah, like a bit of self-promotion, a little bit of social media, I guess, you know, but it's definitely been difficult. I would say like a lot's changed for me after the pandemic. I think just being like so much more aware. I don't know if you've ever seen that documentary, The Social Dilemma. It's really good, but it definitely made me aware of how, yeah, like spending so much time scrolling, it can really affect your mental health, or just being obsessed with the instant gratification, the likes, the follows, all that stuff. It can, I think, really mess with your brain chemistry and stuff. Even like you said, how do I feel about all the recognition and da-da-da-da. The pandemic really made me aware of how much through that whole period, it was probably about 8 years of my career there, I was living for the accolades. And I was really motivated by that as well. You know, the recognition, the accolades, the reward, because it feels good. Like that little dopamine spike or whatever it is, it feels good. And then the pandemic hit and I lost a lot of that. I couldn't get that same gratification from my work. And I think I really became aware of like, I think it was like 3 months into the pandemic, I lost a lot of motivation. I stopped dancing for like 2 months and I'd never gone that long without dancing, without moving, without being in love with dance. But I just put it to the side and sort of, I don't want to say forgot about it, but kind of let it go in this way and kind of had to face a reality where it was like, okay, Presh, what if that's not your source of gratification and purpose anymore? And what if it never is again? So I definitely have a different relationship with I don't want to say like a different relationship with my career, because dance is it is my life's work. Before I'm 40, I still have so much I want to achieve with my dance career, with the roles I do, with the quality of my work, with my artistry, my technique, all of those things. Dancers are always, until the day I retire from the stage or whatever, I'll be working on finding my best technique, my best artistry, my best control over my body and freedom over my body, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think definitely I've had to shift how I get gratification from my career. I think I've kind of detached myself a little bit from it being my source of gratification in the same way that it was before. Whereas perhaps I was motivated to do it for the accolades and the recognition. I think now it's like if I work really hard for a role or work really hard on my technique in class every day, I'm doing it to give myself the gratification because I still love it, instead of looking externally, because I think I was motivated by like external gratification, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really beautiful. That feels like something sustainable as well. And Precious, so you sort of magically also are doing a computer science degree alongside being a full-time ballet dancer at the highest level. So how's that working? And also, what motivated you to get into computer science too?
I was always really interested in computers, and I was like wanted to understand how computers worked and how they were programmed. And it was when I first moved to London, it was just kind of something I was also sort of like, oh, like maybe if I wasn't a dancer, like maybe this is what I would want to do. Or I was just curious, but didn't take it beyond that. And to be honest with you, I was like playing around with like this app probably when I was like 19 or 20. Swifty, it was the name of this, like it was a new programming language then. And I was like trying to learn it. And the guy I was dating at the time, he just like made a couple remarks and kind of laughed and was sort of like, what are you doing? Like, you have no idea what you're doing. Like, just stick to what you know. I just remember it crushed something in me because he just planted a little nugget in my head that was just sort of like, you can't do that and just stop trying because that's ridiculous. It wasn't for me. It was a silly thing for me to even like be curious about. And so nothing really happened with it. And then really it was actually just before the pandemic hit. It wasn't because of the pandemic. I had enrolled in some courses before the pandemic, about 3 months before the pandemic hit, because I just wanted to do something for myself. And I just wanted to get back to learning because I always loved the teacher-student relationship. And I did really love school growing up, but I loved ballet more. So I just wanted to kind of like put a little bit of effort into that. Also just the reality that ballet is a short career. You can really only perform at kind of like your top level up until you're about 40. And that's if you're really lucky. So it was really just me realizing that I really hadn't put any thought or effort into what I might do afterwards. And I was curious. So I decided to put some real energy into it and focus behind it. And then I did like a business communication course in there somewhere, and then got back on track with the computer science again. I'm just slowly working on a degree in computer science. It's harder than I thought it was going to be.
Well, I'm sure as you've conquered the ballet world, I'm very excited to see you conquer the technical world as well. And penultimate question, what role do you think ballet can play in society?
Let's see. The role that I think ballet can play in society, I think it can play so many different roles. Firstly, historically, ballet has been sort of this elitist art form. However, that's really shifted and changed a lot. And I would say it's changed even more so in the past 10 years or the past 20 years than it had over the past couple hundred years. It's become so much more diverse and the limits have been pushed so much more. For example, there's been like 2 different ballets made using James Blake music or using really different music and still doing traditional ballet styled steps too, and like such a great way that like goes with the music. So the thing is that I think people's idea of what ballet is, what society's idea of what ballet is, I think is a very small idea until you've gone to experience it. Like if I was to invite you or anyone I met on the street to ballet for the first time, I wouldn't invite them to Sleeping Beauty or Swan Lake. I'd invite them to probably to Carmen or to like William Forsythe, my favorite choreographer. I'd invite them to see one of his creations because he took ballet and like stretched it into something that's super physical and athletic, but super expressive, extremely musical. And it's almost like audiovisual. It's like 4D audio visuals using real life humans for music. And then beyond that, there's no limits to what you could express or say. It could be a literal story. It could be a narrative story, or it could be something a lot more abstract, or it could be something just showing the music. So the role that I think it plays in society, it's just, I don't want to say that it's just a form of entertainment because I think it runs a lot deeper than that. I think it's an art form that has like the power to, I think it has the power to bring people together and to heal people. I think that it also can influence a lot. Sometimes choreographers choose to put their own political messages into their pieces. Akram Khan's Giselle, I think, does that a little bit. He took a ballet that was made almost 200 years ago and reimagined it about in 2016 he made it, and really took some really interesting ideas and kind of showed some different sort of like class system of society in a really interesting way. You can do so much with ballet. There's no limits to it.
Great answer. Precious. And finally, what's next for you? Where can our listeners find you?
Let's see. So we have a production of Carmen coming in at Sadler's Wells Theater. It's a relatively new take on Carmen by this choreographer, Johan Inger. It's really cool. It's been really cool to dig into the process and kind of like get into the mind of the creator, the choreographer who came up with this whole concept. It's really, really cool. We have to move the set around a lot, which is sort of these giant triangles that we can move around. So each of the triangles has 3 different faces. So we can create all these different sets and we move them in different formations and then use different sides of those 3. There's 9 boxes, 3 sides each. And so we use all those different sides. And so we move them around, kind of create a new set and then dance around, and then we'll move them. And then we might create almost like avenues and streets with our bodies. And then Carmen and Don Jose are walking through the street, and then we'll move the boxes and it'll be him taking her like in and out of, kind of trying to capture her and take her away. It's just really, really cool what he's done with quite a contemporary look of the costumes and sets while still using Bizet's music and everything. It's a really cool take on Carmen. So that's next in March. And then we're going to do Swan Lake in the Round. So back at Royal Albert Hall in June, mid-June, which is a really cool take on Swan Lake. Very traditional Swan Lake, but even bigger. I think it's 64 swans? So it's, whereas normal proscenium, it uses 24 swans. Typically 24 swans. So it's like this crazy, huge production, 64 girls in synchronicity, flapping their arms. It's really cool. We did it back in 2016, and it's always like a sellout production. It's a really good success for the company. But yeah, my first time doing it was in 2016, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Still to this day, it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Wow, amazing. Well, Precious, it's been so fabulous to have you on the podcast, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Precious, if people want to discover more about you, where can they find you?
Instagram, Preciousagram is my main social media account. Give me a follow there. Say hi. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I'm following. It's a beautiful account. Thank you for listening to the Road of Stars podcast and our dynamic guests. I hope you are inspired for your own creative journey. Keep connecting, keep creating.